I watched my stepsisters Rachel and Sophie smile sweetly at their mother Linda as the lawyer read Dad's will aloud. According to the document, they would inherit Dad's $2.3 million estate while I got practically nothing. What they didn't know was that I had been recording everything for months, and in 1 hour, they were about to learn that stealing from family comes with a price they couldn't afford to pay. Let me tell you how this nightmare started. My name is Marilyn, and until 3 years ago, I thought I had the perfect blended family. Dad married Linda when I was 16, bringing her 2 daughters, Rachel and Sophie, into our lives. Rachel was 2 years older than me, Sophie was my age, and at first everything seemed wonderful. Dad had always been my hero. After my mom died when I was 12, he raised me alone for 4 years. He never missed a school play, helped with homework every night, and promised me that no matter what happened, I would always be his little girl. When he met Linda, I was actually happy. Dad deserved love after being alone for so long. Linda was kind and warm, and she treated me like her own daughter from day one. "Marilyn, you're not just Richard's daughter," she told me during their engagement. "You're my daughter too now." Rachel and Sophie seemed to accept me as well. We shared clothes, went shopping together, and they included me in their friend groups. For 2 years, we really did feel like sisters. But everything changed when Dad got sick. The cancer diagnosis came suddenly. One day, Dad was fine. The next, he was starting aggressive treatment. The doctor said he had a good chance if he caught it early, but the treatments were brutal. That's when I started noticing things. Rachel and Sophie began having private conversations that stopped when I entered the room. They would exchange meaningful looks during family dinners, and they started spending a lot more time alone with Dad when he was too weak to really pay attention. I should have realized they were planning something horrible. During my dad's illness, I took a gap year from college to help care for him. Linda worked full-time to keep our health insurance, so I became Dad's primary caregiver. I drove him to treatments, managed his medications, and sat with him during the long, painful days. Rachel and Sophie, meanwhile, were conveniently always busy with college and internships. "Marilyn's so good with Dad," Rachel would say to Linda. "She doesn't mind staying home all the time." The comment stung, but I ignored it. Dad needed me. It was during one of our family dinners that I first heard something that worried me. Dad had asked me to capture family moments while he was still with us, so I sometimes recorded our meals together. "I want you girls to have memories of our time together," he had said weekly. "Record some of our conversations and activities. When I'm gone, you'll want to remember." We all agreed it was a great idea, and I set up a video recorder in a corner on a tripod, almost hidden from view, so we wouldn't feel self-conscious and awkward while it was on. But that night, after Dad went to bed early, I lingered in the kitchen cleaning up when I heard Rachel and Sophie talking to Linda in the dining room. "Mom, we're worried about Marilyn," Sophie's voice came through clearly. "She seems really stressed about missing college." "She's been making comments," Rachel added, "about how she's sacrificing so much for Dad." My heart stopped. I had never said anything like that. "What kind of comments?" Linda asked. "Just hints that she's giving up her future to take care of him," Sophie said carefully. "We're worried she might start to resent it." I was furious. They were already starting to plant seeds against me, and they were doing it when I wasn't even in the room to defend myself. That's when I decided to be more careful about what I heard and when. I also decided to always forget to switch off the video recorder, so it was running almost continually. Fortunately, its design let me switch off all its lights, maybe to save on batteries, but in my case it helped avoid detection. I could tell my stepsisters were planning something bad. I wasn't sure what exactly, but whatever it wasn't meant to be good for me. I needed to find out more, and I needed undeniable proof. Over the next few weeks, I started paying close attention to Rachel and Sophie's behavior. I noticed they would have urgent, whispered conversations that stopped when I appeared. I began positioning myself where I could overhear them. During Dad's birthday celebration, a small family gathering in the living room, I noticed Rachel and Sophie whispering urgently in the corner while Dad opened gifts. When they thought no one was looking, they exchanged meaningful glances. After Dad opened his presents and went to rest, Linda went to the kitchen to clean up. I excused myself to help Dad upstairs, but paused on the stairway when I heard Rachel and Sophie talking in the living room below. "We need to be more careful about what we say around Marilyn," Rachel said quietly. She's getting suspicious, Sophie agreed. Did you see how she looked at us during dinner when we mentioned how tired she seems? We have to make this look natural. Mom has to see Marilyn's attitude change on her own. What if we start mentioning how Marilyn talks about Dad's business, like she's already planning what to do with it? My blood went cold listening to this. They were planning to systematically destroy my reputation with Linda and Dad. A week later, during Sophie's birthday dinner, I positioned myself in the hallway where I could hear the dining room conversation after the formal celebration. Rachel started talking to Dad while I was sitting right there. "Dad, Marilyn's been asking a lot of questions about the business lately," she said innocently. I looked up sharply. "No, I haven't." "You asked about the client contracts yesterday," Rachel said, smiling sweetly. "Because you mentioned them first," I protested. "I was just making conversation." But I could see the confusion in Dad's eyes, the doubt starting to creep in. "I'm just saying," Rachel continued, "it's natural for Marilyn to be curious about her inheritance, but maybe she shouldn't worry about business stuff while you're sick." "I'm not worried about inheritance," I said firmly. "I'm worried about Dad getting better." Sophie jumped in. "Of course you are, we all are. Rachel's just saying it might be better to focus on Dad's health right now instead of other things." But the damage was done. Dad was looking at me differently, wondering if I really was thinking about money instead of his recovery. I watched this manipulation happen right in front of me, seeing how they carefully planted doubt in Dad's mind. I started being very strategic about positioning myself to overhear family conversations. I would excuse myself from rooms but linger nearby, or find reasons to be in adjacent hallways where I could listen. The most damaging conversation I overheard happened during Linda's birthday celebration. After the cake and presents, Dad went upstairs to rest and Linda went to call her sister. I told Rachel and Sophie I was going to clean up the kitchen, but instead I crept back to listen outside the living room door. "This is taking too long," Rachel said quietly. "Dad's still too alert. He's not confused enough yet to change the will." "The medication will get stronger," Sophie replied. "The doctor said the next round of chemo will affect his thinking more. We need to move faster. Marilyn's getting too close to him. She's there for every doctor visit, every important conversation. Maybe we can convince Mom that Marilyn needs a break, send her back to college for a semester." "That could work. Then we'd have more time alone with Dad." I felt sick listening to this. They were talking about Dad's declining mental state like it was an opportunity. But the worst was yet to come. "Have you been practicing his signature?" Sophie asked. Rachel nodded. "I've been tracing it from his medical forms. It's getting easier because his hand shakes now. We'll need to be careful about the timing. It has to look like he wrote it when he was having a good day, but also when his writing might be a little off." "I know. I've been watching his patterns. Tuesday mornings are usually when he's most alert, but his hands still shake from the medication." My heart stopped. They were planning to forge Dad's will. I had heard everything. Their cold calculation, their willingness to take advantage of Dad's illness, their complete lack of love or respect for him. I immediately made copies of all my recordings and took them to a lawyer. "This evidence clearly shows conspiracy to commit fraud," my lawyer confirmed after reviewing everything. "The planning, the manipulation, the forged signature practice, this is a serious criminal case." "But they're planning to forge Dad's will," I said. "Yes, and now we have evidence of their intent. But Marilyn, we need to catch them in the act to make criminal charges stick." "How?" "Keep gathering evidence carefully. If they actually forge a document, we'll have them on conspiracy and fraud." "What about the things they're saying to turn Dad against me?" "That's emotional abuse and manipulation, but it's harder to prosecute. The forgery is what will put them in prison." I went home with a heavy heart. I had to watch my stepsisters destroy my relationship with my dying father, all while pretending to be a loving family. But I kept listening and watching. 2 weeks later, during a family dinner, I noticed Rachel making her move. "Dad, we've been thinking," she said gently. "Maybe it would help if Marilyn went back to college next semester. She's sacrificed so much, but she needs to think about her future too." Dad looked at me sadly. "Maybe Rachel's right, sweetheart. You shouldn't put your life on hold for me." "I want to be here," I said firmly. "College can wait." "But you've been so stressed lately," Sophie added. "We've all noticed." "You seem angry sometimes," Rachel continued, especially when Dad has bad days. I'm not angry at Dad, I protested. I'm frustrated about the situation. But again, I could see doubt in Dad's eyes. They were making him question whether I really wanted to be there. I watched my genuine pain mix with their calculated cruelty. 2 weeks later, Dad took a turn for the worse. The cancer had spread faster than anyone expected. The doctor said he had days, maybe a week. During what we all knew might be Dad's last birthday, a quiet celebration in his bedroom, he was very weak, but insisted on having cake with all of us. I love you girls so much, he whispered to all three of us. You've made my life complete. After Dad fell asleep, Linda went to make phone calls to relatives. I told Rachel and Sophie I was going to get fresh ice water for Dad, but I lingered just outside the door when I heard them whispering urgently. Through the crack in the door, I watched in horror as Rachel pulled papers from her purse. I was gone for maybe 5 minutes, staying close enough to hear everything that happened. Is he unconscious enough? Rachel whispered. Sophie checked Dad's breathing. He's out. The medication knocked him out completely. Okay, hold the paper steady. I've been practicing this signature for weeks. I witnessed everything through the crack in the door. Rachel carefully forging Dad's signature on a legal document while Dad lay dying and unconscious beside them. Make it look shaky, like his hand was weak, Sophie instructed. I know. I've got this. What if the lawyer notices? Dad's been on heavy medication. Everyone expects his writing to look different. They spent 10 minutes perfecting the forgery, checking and rechecking the signature against medical forms Rachel had apparently stolen from Dad's files. This will hold up, Rachel said finally. And by the time anyone questions it, Dad will be gone. What about Marilyn? She'll contest it, but she can't prove anything. It's our word against hers. And Mom will believe us. She trusts us completely. I watched them hide the forged will and sit back down just before I returned with the ice water. They had no idea I had just witnessed their confession to criminal fraud. Dad passed away the next morning. I was holding his hand when it happened, and despite everything that had occurred, my grief was real and overwhelming. Rachel and Sophie played their parts perfectly, crying and comforting Linda, while secretly knowing they had just stolen everything Dad wanted to leave me. We'll handle all the arrangements, Rachel told Linda. Marilyn's too emotional right now. I didn't argue. I let them think they were in control while I prepared for what was coming. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. During those days, I heard Rachel and Sophie making plans and conversations I was part of. We'll need to sell the business, Rachel said during one family dinner. It's too much for us to manage. And the house is too big for Mom, Sophie added. Maybe she should get a condo. Linda listened sadly, trusting her daughters completely. I said nothing, but I was ready. On the morning of the will reading, I arrived at the lawyer's office with a folder full of evidence. Mr. Peterson, Dad's longtime attorney, looked uncomfortable. Marilyn, I have to ask, did your father seem coherent when he supposedly updated his will last week? He was unconscious most of that time, I said carefully. Heavy pain medication. Some things about this document concern me. Before he could say more, Rachel, Sophie, and Linda arrived. Good morning, Mr. Peterson, Rachel said brightly. Such a difficult day. We sat in his conference room, the forged will on the table between us. Richard's will is straightforward, Mr. Peterson began reluctantly. According to this document dated 4 days ago, he leaves his business and primary residence to Rachel and Sophie Morrison, valued at approximately $2.3 million total. Linda gasped. Everything? Marilyn receives $50,000 and some personal items, he continued. I watched Rachel and Sophie perform their surprised and humble act. We had no idea, Rachel said softly. Dad must have thought we needed it more. He probably wanted to take care of us since we're older, Sophie added. Linda looked confused and hurt. But Marilyn gave up college. Maybe he thought that was her choice, Rachel said gently. I stood up calmly. Mr. Peterson, before you finalize anything, I need to show you something. I pulled out my laptop and set it on the conference table. What are you doing? Rachel asked nervously. I have video evidence that this will was forged, I said calmly. The room went silent. That's impossible, Sophie said, but her voice was shaking. I opened the video file from Dad's final birthday celebration. This is what really happened during Dad's final birthday. I fast-forwarded to the moment when Rachel asked me to get ice water. Watch carefully. This is your daughters committing fraud while their stepfather lay dying beside them. I pressed play. Rachel's voice filled the room. Is he unconscious enough? Sophie's voice. He's out. The medication knocked him out completely. Linda's hand flew to her mouth as she watched her daughters check to make sure Dad was unconscious. Hold the paper steady. I've been practicing the signature for weeks. The recording clearly captured Rachel forging Dad's signature while he lay dying beside them. Stop it, Rachel said desperately. This is taken out of context. But Mr. Peterson was already reaching for his phone. I need to call the police immediately. I wasn't finished. I opened another file. This is from my birthday celebration 2 months ago. I overheard them talking when they thought I wasn't around. I played the audio of Rachel and Sophie discussing their plan to manipulate Dad when his medication made him more confused. Linda was sobbing now. How could you do this to him while he was dying? We were trying to protect the family, Sophie said weakly. By forging legal documents while your stepfather was unconscious? Mr. Peterson asked, horrified. I opened one more file. I recorded this conversation during Linda's birthday when they stepped away from the family gathering. The audio played Rachel and Sophie's voices discussing practicing Dad's signature and timing the forgery. You planned this for months, I said quietly. You used Dad's illness as an opportunity to steal his estate, and you did it all while pretending to love him. The police arrived within an hour. Rachel and Sophie were arrested for forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. The video evidence I had collected was submitted to prosecutors, but during the investigation, detectives discovered even more crimes. Rachel and Sophie had been using Dad's business credit cards during his illness, claiming they were buying medical supplies and comfort items. Instead, they had spent over $15,000 on clothes, dinners, and weekend trips. They had also taken jewelry from Dad's safe, items that had belonged to my mother. They planned to claim Dad had given these to them as gifts. The total theft was over $85,000, not including the attempted will fraud. Linda was devastated. I trusted them completely, she cried. They lied about Marilyn. They made me doubt her when she was the only one really taking care of Richard. They're very good manipulators, I said gently. They fooled all of us for a while. The real will, written 2 years earlier, left everything to me with provisions for Linda to live in the house as long as she wanted. Rachel and Sophie were supposed to receive $50,000 each, money Dad felt was generous since they had their own career paths ahead. But now they would get nothing. Their bail was set at $75,000 each. Linda refused to pay it. I won't reward their betrayal, she said firmly. They spent 3 weeks in jail before managing to scrape together bail money from friends and extended family. By then, the story had spread through our community. Everyone knew what they had done. Their colleges launched investigations. Rachel was expelled from law school for conduct incompatible with the legal profession. Sophie lost her internship and was suspended from her accounting program. The trial took place 6 months later. Rachel and Sophie had hired expensive lawyers with money borrowed from relatives, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. The videos were played in court, showing their cold calculation and complete lack of remorse. The handwriting analysis confirmed the forgery. The credit card fraud was documented in detail. I testified for 3 hours, describing their systematic campaign of lies and how they had manipulated our dying father. They didn't just forge a document, I told the jury. They spent months poisoning a dying man against his own daughter. They stole from him while pretending to care for him, and they did it all for money. Rachel and Sophie's lawyers tried to argue that the recordings were private family moments taken out of context, but the video evidence was clear and damning. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all charges. Rachel was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Sophie received 3.5 years. They were also ordered to pay full restitution plus damages totaling over $200,000. During sentencing, the judge was harsh. You betrayed a dying man who loved and trusted you, he said. You manipulated his final months, caused tremendous pain to your family, and committed serious financial crimes. Your actions show a level of callousness that shocks this court. Linda attended every day of the trial. She never spoke to Rachel and Sophie again. They stopped being my daughters the day they decided to hurt Richard, she told me. You're my only daughter now. 1 year after the trial, I got the most satisfying phone call of my life. Marilyn, "This is Detective Martinez. I thought you'd want to know. Rachel just got arrested again." My heart jumped. What happened? She tried to forge another will. This time it was her cellmate's dying grandmother. Same exact method you caught her using on your father. I almost laughed. Some people never learn. Gets better. Sophie got fired from her minimum wage job at a gas station. Turns out she was stealing from the register. Manager said she took almost $300 before they caught her on camera. Rachel and Sophie's lives had become a never-ending cycle of failure and crime. But the ultimate twist came 6 months later when Linda got a desperate phone call. "Mom!" Sophie's voice was shaking. "I need help. I'm pregnant and homeless. The baby's father left when he found out about my criminal record." Linda's face went cold. "You chose money over family. Now live with that choice." She hung up without another word. The business Dad left me was now worth over $4 million. Meanwhile, his stepdaughters were living in poverty, exactly where they belonged. 2 years after Dad's death, I graduated college with honors and was successfully running his business. Linda and I had created new family traditions, including making Dad's favorite cookies every Sunday while sharing memories of him. "He would be so proud of you," Linda said one afternoon. "He would be heartbroken about Rachel and Sophie," I replied. "Maybe," Linda said thoughtfully, "but I think he suspected something was wrong toward the end. He seemed worried about them, like he sensed they were changing. Dad always told me to pay attention to people's actions, not just their words. That advice saved everything." "Your careful attention saved us," Linda said. "Without your evidence, we never would have known the truth." A few months later, I received a letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from Rachel, written from prison. "Marilyn," it read, "I know you'll probably never read this, but I needed to apologize. Sophie and I were wrong about everything. We let greed destroy our family and hurt Richard when he needed us most. I know we can never fix what we broke, but I wanted you to know that I understand how terrible we were." I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Not to save it, but because forgiveness was complicated. They had stolen from my dying father. They had manipulated him in his weakest moments. They had nearly destroyed my relationship with Linda, but they had also been my sisters once, before greed changed them into people I didn't recognize. Linda found me that evening, staring at Dad's favorite photo of all 5 of us from happier times. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Whether I'll ever be able to forgive them? What does your heart tell you?" "That Dad would want them to face consequences for what they did, but he'd also want me to find peace." "Both of those things can be true," Linda said gently. I nodded. "I'm not ready to forgive them yet. Maybe I never will be, but I won't let them poison my future either." "That sounds exactly like something your father would say." I smiled, remembering Dad's voice. "Do what's right, Marilyn, even when it's hard." 3 years later, I'm engaged to Michael, a wonderful man who understands that family isn't always about blood. Linda will walk me down the aisle because she's my real mother now. She's found love again with a kind man from her church, and I couldn't be happier for her. I never heard from Rachel and Sophie again after that one letter. They served their sentences and disappeared from our lives completely. I heard through old mutual friends that they moved across the country and legally changed their names. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty about sending my stepsisters to prison. The answer is always the same. No. They didn't just steal money. They poisoned my father's final months with lies. They made him doubt the daughter who loved him most. They turned his illness into an opportunity for personal gain. Those weren't mistakes or moments of weakness. Those were calculated crimes committed by adults who chose money over love. I learned that family is about loyalty, honesty, and sacrifice. Rachel and Sophie stopped being my family the moment they decided to forge that will. The proof that sent them to jail came from watching and listening during family events. Rachel and Sophie said too much when they thought no one could hear them. I learned to listen closely and stay where I could hear what they really said. The evidence that destroyed Rachel and Sophie's lives wasn't revenge. It was proof. Proof of who they really were when they thought no one was listening. Today, when I make difficult business decisions, I hear Dad's voice. Do what's right, even when it's hard. I did what was right. I chose justice over fake family loyalty, and I'm proud of that choice, because real family protects each other from people who would hurt us, even when those people once shared our name. The evidence that sent them to prison came from being observant and strategic during a time when they got careless with their plotting. And in the end, that evidence saved the family that actually mattered, me and Linda, two women who chose love over greed. If you enjoyed this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories where truth always wins in the end. Trust me, the next one will shock you even more.